All right, let's call the meeting of election board to order. Let the record show Michelle Reynolds, April Gann, I can't believe I got that right, Danny Chambers, Bob Miller, and Julia Douglas are all present today. And let's go over a few ground rules right quick. Let's just be respectful of each other as we walk our way through this process. We'll speak one at a time. Each will have 5 minutes to discuss whatever the issue or complaint is. Christy will have a chance to rebut or explain the situation depending on whatever it is. And then if you will, speak to the board and don't speak to each other. Maybe that'll keep us from having any kind of controversy or upsets or whatever. And y'all are more than welcome to come up here one at a time to the microphone if you would like and state the issue or complaint, or if you'd rather do it, if you're comfortable doing it from where you're at. It's really whatever makes you comfortable. If you're very soft-spoken, which I'm not, I'm a loudmouth. If you're soft-spoken, you might ought to come up to the mic because it is being recorded. All right, so we'll call the meeting to order at 8:31 a.m. Item number 2, discuss take action issues pertaining to the 2024 primary election. And I don't know who would like to go first. I don't have an order of how you'd like to go. You just tell me. You're more than welcome to come up, and we'll address each problem one at a time. Oh, I thought you were getting up, Tamara. I'm sorry. I thought you were standing up.
Nope.
Ms. Bruni, would you like to discuss yours, or would you rather me just read?
I'll let you read, and if anybody has any questions, I'd be glad to.
Okay, and then we go down the line. And I apologize, ma'am. I don't know your name. I don't know if you're here. Yeah, I'm pointing. Sorry, yes, ma'am. You.
Tasha Sheehan.
Oh, okay, you're on one of the elections coming up. Good. All right. Well, this is from Melanie M. Bruning. This letter is from April Gann about questionable procedure I witnessed while serving as a poll watcher on March 5th, 2024, during the tabulation of early votes and mail-in votes in the Commissioner's courtroom. Although I was able to observe the work of the election officers, I did not participate in the tallying and counting of the votes to verify that they were tallied and read correctly. I was unable to witness the closing and sealing of the election ballots from early and mail-in ballots as tabulated, and was told that they do not seal any envelopes, and all records prepared by the election officer to be handed over to Christy Covey, got it right, for her to finalize. This includes the transfer of memory cards, flash drives, hard drives, data storage devices, or other medium now existing or later developed for use with voting system equipment. No one seemed to know or care about sealing records to be handed over to the proper officers. In my Texas Secretary of State poll watcher training, it was stressed that all records should be sealed and transferred to be followed. I was basically dismissed and was told my job was done. I did witness 4 mail-in ballots being altered by a worker who found the ballots to be incomplete or partially filled out so they could still be counted. These actions caused me to question the validity of some votes tallied from registered voters. While I don't believe these actions would have changed any outcomes in our county elections, I do feel they need to be addressed and to confirm future election results are done with complete integrity. Thank you for taking the time to read and follow up on my concerns. Sincerely, Melanie Bruning, signature, and then her name printed. Ms. Bruning, would you like to add anything to this at all?
Well, I just want to say that I wasn't trying to point fingers or anything, but because I had just recently taken the test before I actually, did the poll watching, it was still very fresh in my mind what to do and what not to do. And those were just two things that stood out very strongly to me. And I felt like, well, anybody can make a mistake. And especially if you've been doing it repetitiously for years the same way. And rules and laws do change on a very regular basis. And, if we just were accidentally making a mistake for something that we weren't sure about, I understand that, but I think that we all need to get on the same page and do it correctly.
Okay. Chris, do you have anything you'd like to say to this at all?
So as far as the ballots go, if we have, say for example, like a curbside voter that is shaky and can't color in the bubble correctly or properly, our machines won't read them. So our ballot board is allowed to make a duplicate of that ballot to where it can be ran through and counted, because they did come in and vote. It's states how they wanted to vote, and so they just make a duplicate so it can be written in. Because if it's not colored in correctly, or if it's outside the lines, or if it's X'd and not colored in, the machine won't read it. So that's how that procedure works. And as far as like the end of the night goes, or whenever they're done, the ballot boxes do get locked, but they get transferred to the clerk's vault where there's no access. Even the sticks get put in the rolling vault. So it's double locked. There's just, nobody has access to that area because it's a passcode to get in. And there's only 2 people that know the passcode.
Ms. Bruning, would you like to
Well,
ask
I
any
was still in
questions?
the room when nothing was necessarily locked up at that point. But in the rules that I read, that was supposed to be locked up before I ever left. I was supposed to have been able to have watched it being locked, and I didn't. So that was just my concern. That-
Okay,
And the next meeting we have, we can bring that up.
to
and make
correct
sure
and
that-
clarify and clean this problem up.
Mhm.
All right. Before we hear from the folks in the room, I have one from Demetra Conrad. Let's read it into the record also. To April Gann, it's my understanding that there's a meeting forthcoming to address the opportunities in the election administrator office, and I have feedback I'd like to share. Please note that this is not a complaint or an allegation of any kind. This is simply an identified process gap that I'm sharing in hopes that there can be some controls put in place in an effort to close this gap. In January, I submitted a public information request to obtain the voters who voted list. I submitted my request on 1/30/2024 and received the request information on 2/11/2024. The information was provided in PDF format, so I followed back up requesting a copy of the same information in Excel format. I've requested the same thing in previous years as I find this is a valuable format. The next day I received the information in Excel, but only for one of the 2 elections requested. I was advised that there were some technical issues in trying to gather the same information for the other year requested, and additional research was being done. Ultimately, I was informed that neither the state nor the county had this format, and that it is not legally required to have it. While I understand that this is not a legal requirement, those who know me know that I often say that the legal requirements are the baseline expectation. We should always make sure we are meeting our legal requirements, but when there is an opportunity to improve upon the minimum standard, we should make every effort to do so. In this particular case, this type of information is often used in canvassing efforts, and so having the data in a way that can be stored, filtered, etc. proves to be very beneficial for the end user. And so again, I share this information only as a request that some guardrails and parameters be put in place to prevent this from happening in the future. I imagine in the midst of an election there may be many responsibilities that require immediate attention and likely have to be met with particular timelines. This is not likely high on the priority list, and understandably so, but I ask to consider improving processes that ensure this information is captured in Excel within a reasonable time frame is inspected for completion as well. I hope you find this feedback to be beneficial and sincerely delivered to drive process improvement. Demetra Conrad. Do you have anything you'd like to say about answering her open records request?
So I did look into it, and one of the dates that she gave me, I had completely forgotten about. That election was pushed back to November, and she didn't request November records.
Okay.
She only requested May.
All right, so now we'll move to the other folks. How you doing, Deb?
I'm doing good.
Other folks in the room that has an issue or a complaint that we can discuss. Tanya, Chip, Tamara.
I'm fine with you reading mine into the record.
All right. Okay. And Chip, what I'll do is read yours, then I'll read what I thought was a reply, maybe not. Looks like it's all yours, okay? So I'll read it in. If we get it wrong, somebody just have to stand up and tell me I got it wrong, okay? All right, this is dated March 25th, 2024. Ms. Gann, first of all, thank you for your service to the community and for running a great department, representing us to the highest standard. I've watched you and your team do it for many years now, and your efforts do not go unnoticed by the citizens. I would like to file a formal complaint regarding our elections department. I have experienced many issues for 3 elections now and feel that we have to develop a more efficient system for FOIA requests. I could name several examples even regarding this election, but the most recent one was a FOI request, and I filed on March the 7th, 2024, that was sent to and received by election official Christy Covey. I almost screwed it up again. Here's the request for your records. Christy, I tried to call you twice today, could not reach you. Please provide me with the following. Number 1, all financial reports filed for incumbent from Tammy Ray for the party preliminary election of March 5th, 2024. Number 2, a list and all correspondence relating to any FOIA request made regarding to my campaign, including but not limited to, or any other matter regarding my campaign. Thanks, regards, John Chip M. Jocelyn IV. And then there's a timeline here which will read this into the record. March 7th, 2024, email FOIA request. March 7th, 2024, received email from Christy Covey stating she had to leave the office. March the 11th, 2024, follow up on FOIA request in person since I was already at the annex. Finally received item number 1, an original FOIA request above dated March 7th, 2024. March 21, 2024, I inquired as to where above request item number 2 was at, and was subsequently, informed by Ms. Covey that she somehow was not aware of this request, even though it was on the same email from the one she actually did finally fill. In an email on the same day, she said, I have no information pertaining to the second part of your request. March 21st, 2024, I informed her that she had received my request number 2 and was in the same email dated March 7th, 2024. March 21st, 2024, I forward email above to her again with the original request. As of the date of this email, I still have not received a completed FOIA request or information as to any potential non-compliance, now 18 days later. As I said, I have experienced significant delays in my past 3 elections. One of my greatest concerns is that well after my original request was sent, that other FOIA requests have been constantly filled by the elections office, some within minutes and hours, while mine have not been pushed but actually ignored altogether. I'm not asking for preferential treatment. I'm more than willing to be compliant and patient, but information is absolutely not being distributed in a fair or equitable manner, and I hope that you can help remedy this for Somervell County. Please let me know if any additional questions. Again, thank you for your service and your attention to this matter. Best regards, Chip Jocelyn. All right, Christy, back to you.
So with that request, I contacted the county attorney and I did ask him to be here, but I guess he had something else.
He's in the building, but he might have forgot about us right now because I know he had his hands full, but, and I apologize, I didn't mean to interrupt you. Maybe we could try to get a hold of him.
But he advised me to reply no later than the 21st, which I did. I fulfilled his request for Tammy's and didn't have any information pertaining to the second part of his request. I didn't say I didn't receive the second part of his request. I didn't have any information to give to him pertaining to the second part. And spoke with the county attorney again, and he advised me just to say I don't have anything pertaining to that request.
Chip, you probably would like to reply to that.
I do. All right, so actually, email dated 3/21/24. Hello, this is from Christy to me. Hello, I have no information pertaining to the second part of your request. That's the entirety of the email, so clearly she did say that.
Well, second part means number 2.
Let's let him
Right.
finish and then you finish and then we'll go
So-
one at a time.
Yeah, so she did say that. Here today, she's testifying that she did not say that. I have the email right here if you'd like to see it. So, if she had spoken to council and said she cannot fill the second request, perhaps she should have communicated that. She did not whatsoever. And
Come on in, Trey.
it's you know, I'm all ears if something's going on, but the problem is zero communication. I don't know what's going on. So, you know, that's where I'm at. To this day, I still have not received any information about my request, and here we are over a month later. I've gotten zero emails from elections, so, Christie or anyone else, so.
All right, Christie.
I didn't have anything pertaining to the second part of his request to send him, and that's why I said I don't have anything.
Judge,
I even
your name?
spoke with Trey about it.
Judge,
Yes.
she didn't say she didn't have anything. I haven't, if she sent me documentation saying she didn't have anything, I never received it. So if she would have said that, then I would have pursued as to why she doesn't have this information.
So how do you perceive me saying I have no information pertaining to the second part of your request? That doesn't mean I didn't get it. That just means I have nothing to reply to you.
And I don't have that email here. That's something. Trey, sorry, the reason you got involved is because I think Christie had talked to you about this situation. And she had told the records request.
Yes, she did, and it's been a couple weeks, and I was supposed to be here at 8:30 and got hung up.
No problem.
She had to ask me, and sorry, Chris,
No,
if
you're
I get it
good.
wrong, forgive me, but she asked me if I don't have information that somebody is asking about, what do I do? And I said, well, under the Freedom of Information Act, if a document exists that a public entity has, then it needs to be turned over within the 10 business days. If nothing exists, there's nothing that you can turn over and give to anyone. So at that point, now of course in larger counties, where I came from, Johnson County, if you don't have the information, there's no duty to actually respond back and say you don't have it. You can always just not turn it over. The more courteous thing is to say, hey, this doesn't exist, and respond back to the person requesting it. Because the repercussions of not turning over something that's requested that does exist is the Attorney General just orders you to turn it over, and you have to turn it over.
All right, Christie or Chip, I bet one of y'all have something to say.
And I do have an email that says, my reply says, I do not have the information.
That's the one I just read, so.
It's here, hello, I have no information pertaining to the second part of your request. It was sent on the 21st, if I'm reading it correctly.
Yeah, I don't have that one. Well, it looks like maybe here in blue, it does say I have no information pertaining to the second part of your request.
So I did receive the second part of his request. With the first part, I could only reply to the first part. And that's when I sent him copies of her campaign finance stuff.
Okay.
Just ask the clarifying question.
You bet. You can ask and say anything you like.
Okay, because this seems like it's a little convoluted, but, so he sent both requests in one email. You replied to one but completely ignored responding to the second because you didn't have any information, and then you didn't respond that you didn't have any information until he asked if you had any information. Is that what I'm understanding? You just only answered one half, but didn't say anything about the second half. Is that correct?
That's what I was advised.
Okay, I'm just trying to understand because
It is convoluted.
it's very convoluted.
Yes.
So then he asked where you were with the second half, and you said, I don't have anything. But no time during that period did you say, I've reached out to the county attorney, I've asked for an opinion. None of that information was provided, correct?
Correct.
Maybe some more clarity and more conversation between the two would have helped
Would have solved some of the
eliminate some of the issues.
issue.
Right. All right, Trey, you have anything else to say at all?
And I'm sorry, because I don't know everything that's
Yeah,
been
I
said
know.
before.
Yeah, sorry,
No,
man.
and I mean, I just, whether it's dealing with elections or anything else, right? If somebody from the public requests a document that they think may be in possession of a government entity, right? If it's there, it's gotta be turned over, but the government entity has no duty to create a document based on a request from someone. So if a request made, it's either there and you're supposed to turn it over, or it doesn't exist, then there's nothing for you to give
Deb of all people knows all about that.
Yep.
All right, so, anything else? Tanya, Roxanne?
You know, this election was plagued with tons of complaints. Not only from the constituents, but also from a lot of the candidates. It was repetitive for about a 3-week period. If my phone wasn't blowing up, Julia's phone was blowing up. And I'm sure Christy was in the same boat with some of the stuff. And I had several questions on things that came up. And I did go to my commissioner, and Trey was a part of that conversation. When Julia had submitted, after our precinct 3 judge contacted Christy and said that he no longer wanted to serve, we had to come up with a judge and an alternate. And we did. And when Julia submitted it, within 24 hours, all of a sudden, there's a complaint filed on one of our judges. And it just, I had a hard time understanding how that could happen. Julia and I spoke extensively about it. I contacted SOS. I contacted my commissioner. Trey was in there that day. Trey did research, and nowhere could we find that a complaint could be lodged against the people that we submit to serve as an election judge and or an alternate. And so a lot of my concern surrounding that is, how does this information even get out? How does it become public knowledge before it's even brought to commissioner's court and approved? That was one issue. And then we had several complaints that seemed to be filed on that same judge. And I don't understand where the problem is with that. And when I spoke to the judges that the complaints were filed upon, because there were 2 that were filed upon when the election process had started, it just seemed like there was a lot of he said, she said, and it just seemed like there was a lot of unfairness, and I'm not real sure what all went on with that. Now, I can tell you, Christy and I worked through it, and we were able to say, you know what, we're just going to stand with what we have. That was on the night they set up. We're standing. This is what we've got. Julia and I spoke about it. We weren't budging. This is what we submitted. This is what was approved by the courts, and we need to get all of this pettiness put down, because this is absolutely ridiculous. I did have a couple of candidates complain, and I don't want to speak for them, because they should be here if they want to voice their opinions.
I agree.
But there's just, I think we're having just some issues that we really need to get worked out, and we need to put collective minds with it. I think Christy did a wonderful job with the election. I have no complaint per se about her abilities or any of that. I just think we had way too many issues, and some of these things should never happen, and we should be able to address them quickly, and we should be able to stand behind the documents that are submitted and approved. And I even reached out to the attorneys at SOS, and still to this day we don't understand how the information got leaked and why the complaint was so selective to one of our judges. And that's just not, it doesn't make any office look good. It doesn't make Christie's office look good. It doesn't make the Republican Party's office and its committee look good. And it certainly doesn't shine a very good light on our election whatsoever, because the one thing we don't want is SOS down here.
Amen.
And we don't want anybody questioning the integrity of our elections by any far stretch of the imagination.
Especially what we have coming up in November.
Absolutely.
We want to get everything in line before we get to November, because, the runoffs will be tough enough, but November will be really tough.
I think we need to have a whole lot more privacy with some of our stuff until it becomes public record. And I think all of us have to, and I mean all of us, that includes everyone in this room, we have to start putting our emotions and our personal relationships aside and continue to do what we have been elected and or appointed to do. And that's something that has to be worked on.
and I can't speak for the board, I'm just speaking for me, it sounds like we definitely have procedural issues that we definitely need to work through on whatever we do procedure-wise. Information open records requests, we definitely need to work on how we're handling that, obviously. And I know that you know a lot about the retention end of it, and you and Christie can definitely do discussion on that. God, I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, I didn't mean to interrupt.
No, you're good.
So, as far as the retention on records requests, do you have to adhere to the local government retention schedule that refers to open records requests?
That I honestly don't know. I know we have our own election-specific retention schedule, but it only addresses election records, voter registration, and campaign finance stuff. And that's basically all it addresses.
Okay. So I think it would be a good idea to contact the Secretary of State and ask them specifically if you have to adhere to the local government retention schedule. That is something that I can provide to you. It talks about the, retention on open records requests, specifically open records requests that you can fulfill. Typically they're categorized into two categories. And so if you can fulfill the request, it's typically a year. And then if you cannot, then we keep it for 2 years. But again, that is something that I can provide to you. I can email you if you'd like. But again, I think it would be a good idea to contact the Secretary of State and ask them if that pertains to you.
I can, but I think they're probably gonna refer me to the county attorney on that one. That's kind of what I'm thinking, that they're probably gonna do. I will, I'll definitely reach out, but I think that's gonna be my response.
Well, y'all correct me if I'm wrong here. If we live by the guidelines that we have to live by in the county, then at least she's safe and covered. Because
Right.
if we do the minimal, then if it's more stringent, great, but if we at least do what we have to live by, because I know you keep close records on the 1, the 2, the 3, the 7, the 10. So if we go over that and we at least abide by that, are you good with that, Christie? That we abide by at least the minimal standards that we have to in the local government code?
Yeah, and I was advised to keep the request forms,
Yes.
because I haven't in the
Yes.
past, so.
Yeah.
And I can, that's fine, that's not a problem.
Keep all documentation pertaining to anything and everything, yeah.
I think that's probably a good idea, because what Christie's saying is true. Nobody wants to give legal opinions to everyone, so even though the Secretary of State has the answers to most of the stuff that we want, it's easier for them just to refer them back to me, but then I have to try to go to them to get the answer, because it's not clear in most of the statutes what you're supposed to do. But then they don't want to tell you what it is in case they're wrong, then they don't want to be blamed for giving an incorrect decision. So it's kind of a quagmire of let's just point the finger and move stuff around so that nobody actually has to make a decision on it. It kind of goes back to kind of what Tanya was talking about earlier, which, she was asking me about once the election judges' names are turned in. Well, I went to the elections code and you can find the statutes, but it doesn't address that at all in there. And so luckily Tanya knew some people down there, and she's like, hey, I'm checking on it, because I told her all I know to do is call the Secretary of State, because it doesn't say in the elections code what we're supposed to do. And then but then they don't want to give an answer, but they're the ones that are actually supposed to be in charge of this and regulating it. So it's
Sort of like the IRS, don't want to be blamed.
And a lot of it too, they say, refer to the Attorney General for their opinion as well, and it's contradicting sometimes the Attorney General's opinion.
It is. Go ahead, Tanya.
And when I did speak to the SOS office concerning that particular time, that particular thing that happened, the attorneys that I spoke with 3 ultimately. What they said is that when we turn in our election judge and alternates to the election administrator, until it is, and it's a pass-through vote for the county commissioners. Now that's what they told me. And until it's then, it is not public record, and no one should know except for the executive committee that elected those judges and the election administrator. But let me do some research and I'll get back to you if I find something different. Well, here we are, and nobody has ever gotten back to me. Now, Julia and I have done some extensive digging in SOS laws, and I have used some of my contacts in the House of Representatives that work with election laws and election integrity. And I've also reached out to them as well concerning some of the issues that we had to contend with. And it was massive. I want everybody to understand that we were overly bombarded this election season. And so there were a lot of things that got maybe misunderstood or maybe mishandled because it was massive, like I've not seen ever before in my lifetime. And in the process of all of this that Julia and I have been working on and researching and so forth, the SOS election laws that govern Christie, that govern what we can do, that govern the election code, is extremely opaque and convoluted. And it is very open-ended in many cases. And these are things that we've discovered in the last couple of weeks. And so with that, we now know that we have a whole new issue we have to address, and that is legislation. You know, and one of the things that Julia and I've talked about is we got to get their District 58 runoff, of course, because we don't know who our representative is going to be.
Right.
But we would like to work to enact better legislation, which would give Christy Covey, our election administrator, a more clearer direction. It would give the Republican Party and the Democrat Party a more clearer direction, and also outline who is responsible for what and exactly how it really needs to be done, because it is so open-ended and convoluted.
And if y'all get an early start, 2025, they'll be meeting soon. Go ahead, Judy.
So I have, well, 3 comments. The first one is, just because we assume that's what the SOS is gonna say, doesn't mean we shouldn't do the actions.
Right.
Because if the question is coming up today, it's gonna come up next election season and the next election season.
Right.
So we need to have something showing that we've actually taken the steps to try to figure out what the appropriate answer is so that we can make the appropriate changes.
Mitigate and solve the problem.
Absolutely. My second comment is kind of building off of what Tanya just said. Because our election code is so convoluted
It is.
and so open-ended, that's why we need to have policies and procedures in place for our elections department to make sure that everything we do is consistent. We can't continue to fall back and say it's not required by law per the election code.
Right.
Because the election code says one thing one place and one thing somewhere else, and those two don't necessarily jive.
They don't.
So that's why it's very important that we get these policies and procedures in place. And my third comment is, y'all are addressing record retention, but I don't think the complaint is necessarily not fulfilling open records requests in a timely manner. The complaint is it's not being fulfilled consistently across the board, and that there are showing favoritism.
Mhm.
So those are 2 very different complaints.
So procedures need to be in place across the board to take care of how they answer to the timely manner they're